Ethan Parker was not born into wealth. His earliest memories were of grease-stained overalls, the scent of motor oil, and the metallic clank of tools in his father's rundown garage on the edge of town. By 14, he was elbow-deep in engines, fixing carburetors and learning the kind of lessons school couldn't teach: discipline, patience, and the value of hard work. Life hadn't given him shortcuts. When his father passed away suddenly, Ethan dropped out of college to take over the garage, determined to keep the family business alive. Nights were spent in the shop, days juggling bills, and weekends studying business books borrowed from the library. He slept more on the hard bench in his office than in his bed. By the time he was 25, he had turned one failing garage into 3 successful ones, and by 30, he owned a chain of repair shops stretching across 3 states. On paper, he was a self-made millionaire. But behind the numbers, Ethan was lonely. His friends were either married or building families of their own, while his relationships fizzled out. Most women couldn't handle the long hours and constant travel. Ethan told himself it was fine. Success was enough. At least, that's what he thought. That belief shattered the night he met Melissa. It was at a charity gala in New York, an event he almost skipped. Ethan never enjoyed the stiff suits and shallow conversations of high society, but his business partner insisted. "You've got to be seen, Ethan," his partner said. "Reputation is currency." Ethan arrived late, uncomfortable in his tailored tuxedo, his mind still buzzing with numbers from the day's work. He lingered by the bar, sipping whiskey and wishing for an early escape, when he noticed her. Melissa. She stood in the center of the room, radiant in a crimson gown that seemed to demand attention. Her laughter carried across the ballroom, smooth and practiced, drawing people like moths to a flame. Yet when her eyes met Ethan's, she excused herself from the crowd and walked straight toward him. "You look like you'd rather be under a car than in a tux," she teased, her voice lilting with confidence. Ethan laughed, caught off guard. "You're not wrong. This isn't exactly my world." "Then maybe," she said, her smile softening, "we can survive it together." That was the beginning. For the first time in years, Ethan felt noticed, not as the businessman, not as the millionaire, but as a man. Melissa listened, or at least appeared to, when he spoke about his past. She asked questions about his work, his childhood, his ambitions. And when she slipped her hand into his, Ethan felt something he hadn't in a long time: hope. Over the next few months, she became his constant companion. They dined at rooftop restaurants, traveled to wine country, and attended every gala hand in hand. Ethan's friends raised their eyebrows, whispering concerns about how quickly things were moving, but he ignored them. Love, he told himself, wasn't supposed to be logical. It was supposed to feel like this. By the end of the year, Ethan proposed, convinced he had finally found someone who saw beyond the money, beyond the success. Melissa said yes with tears in her eyes and a trembling, "I've been waiting for this." The wedding was grand, the kind Ethan never dreamed of for himself. String quartets, white roses, and a guest list filled with names that graced the society pages. As Melissa walked down the aisle toward him, Ethan swore he was the luckiest man alive. But what he didn't know then was that Melissa wasn't walking toward love. She was walking toward her prize. Their third anniversary should have been a celebration. Ethan had just closed a massive deal to expand his auto repair chain into another state, and he wanted to surprise Melissa with something special. During a business trip to Paris, he had spent hours searching for the perfect gift: a delicate diamond necklace, crafted by a jeweler whose work he admired for years. It wasn't just about the jewelry. For Ethan, it symbolized everything he thought their marriage stood for: commitment, loyalty, and love. He landed back in New York a day earlier than expected. The car ride home felt unusually exciting. He imagined the joy on Melissa's face when he appeared unannounced, holding the velvet box in his hand. He pictured the two of them embracing in the soft glow of the terrace lights, toasting to 3 years of shared dreams. But fate had other plans. As Ethan pushed open the grand double doors of their Connecticut estate, the house was strangely quiet. He set down his suitcase and walked toward the terrace, where the faint sound of Melissa's voice carried through the open glass doors. She was laughing, her tone sharper, more careless than the one she used when speaking to him. Curious, Ethan slowed his steps, the necklace box hidden in his palm. "He's just my ticket to wealth," Melissa's voice rang out, followed by a chuckle. Ethan froze. She continued, unaware of his presence. Once I've drained his wallet, I'll dump him. Honestly, I can't believe how easy it is. Men like him think being nice makes them special. He's sweet, sure, but naive. And I wasn't built for loyalty. I was built for luxury. The words hit Ethan like a hammer. His breath caught in his throat, and the velvet box slipped from his hands, clattering against the marble floor. Melissa spun around, startled, her phone still pressed to her ear. Her eyes locked on the necklace on the ground, then on Ethan's face, pale, stunned, and filled with something colder than anger. "Ethan, I can explain," she stammered, fumbling to hang up the call. That wasn't what it sounded like. But Ethan said nothing. The silence was heavier than any accusation. Melissa rushed toward him, forcing a smile that trembled at the corners. "You know how girls talk with their friends. I was joking. Just being dramatic. You don't actually think I meant that, do you?" Still, Ethan stood frozen. His mind replayed her words on a loop, each repetition slicing deeper. Ticket to wealth. Drain his wallet. Dump him. He bent down, picked up the necklace, and placed it gently back into the box. For a brief moment, Melissa's eyes lit up. She thought he was about to forgive her, to brush it aside. Instead, he closed the box, slipped it into his pocket, and walked past her without a word. That night, Ethan lay awake in the guest room, staring at the ceiling, his heart pounding with betrayal. He didn't cry, didn't rage. But something inside him shifted, hardened. Melissa had revealed the truth of her heart. And Ethan knew that if she saw him as a ticket, then it was time he decided just how far that ride would go.